My name is Angelita COF. My topic is going to be on the requirement of an undergraduate degree for applying to medical school. One question that we usually ask ourselves now that we're in college is, where are we going to be in 10 years? You know, I see myself on my first year of surgical residency maybe, or maybe even my internship year. But the thing is that to become a surgeon, you need 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, 1 year of internship, 5 to 8 years of residency, and then you can specialize, which is a very long time. But you know, schooling itself takes 8 years, which brings me to my main claim. Spending 4 years to receive an undergraduate degree to continue on to 4 more years of medical school is completely unnecessary. I mean, it takes about 4 years to earn a bachelor's degree, but most of us all know that not everyone gets a bachelor's degree within 4 years. I mean, some of us are on the 5-year plan. So not many people get through the prerequisites anyway. So, usually to get into medical school, you need to add prerequisites to your roadmap already. So that adds on probably an extra year to the 4 years that you were planning on staying here with. And only 2 of those 4 to 5 possible years that you will be here will be classes that medical school will be looking at. So, which brings me to my first supporting claim. Focusing on a major will only distract from the prerequisites that you're supposed to have for medical school. According to the Association of American Medical Colleagues, most schools will expect applicants to have taken the MCAT, which is the Medical College Admissions Test, kind of like an SAT, and to have completed the following types of courses. So 1 year of biology, 1 year of physics, 1 year of English, and 2 years of chemistry, you know, through organic chemistry and what have you. And these prerequisites can easily be fulfilled within 2 years, not 4 that we're supposed to have to get a bachelor's degree. And essentially, when you're applying to medical school, the admissions director will only look at those 2 years that you're really pounding in the prerequisites for medical school. So why continue on with having 4 years of 4 years of college to get a bachelor's degree? The only use of core classes is basically to boost a GPA. So according to the Keck School of Medicine at USC, people really only need a 3.0 or higher to get into medical school. But the catch is that all the prerequisites can be completed with a 2.0 or higher. So that basically means that you either pass the class with the prerequisites, and then you can have your GPA boosted with all your core classes, which have nothing to do with medicine. And hypothetically speaking, if a student were to apply with a 3.5 GPA, you know, they'll be taken into further consideration. But then at the end of the day, you look at their records, and all their prerequisites add up to a 2.1 GPA. And the real question here is, does anybody want to see great doctor? My second supporting claim is that remaining in college for an extra 2 years, which is completely unnecessary, will raise student debt for for the students in medical school. So the Association of American Medical Colleagues conducted a survey for medical students up to October 2002, saying that most students range in debt between $100,000 and $200,000, $300,000, sorry, and that's just for medical school alone. Adding on to the cost of actual college to get to medical school is probably about $8,000 to even $30,000 per year. So these rates can be cut in half if someone were only to have 2 years and not the 4 years needed for a bachelor's degree. My third claim is that medical schools seek universal knowledge, but this can be still filled with the prerequisites that they ask for. Like Johns Hopkins School of Medicine require that you also have, along with the other prerequisites, that you also have prerequisite classes in humanities, social and behavioral sciences, mathematics, and physics, which sounds like a universal understanding to me. These prerequisites are similar to most other medical schools in California and also to most medical schools in the United States. So it's clear that the universal knowledge and understanding of education can be established within those 2 years. In conclusion, it is completely unnecessary to make it a requirement for an undergraduate to have 4 years where they can only have 2 years of college, and that would be sufficient. Having 2 years of prerequisite classes will ultimately help medical students to focus on their medical career, decrease national student debt, and establish a universal knowledge of life within those 2 years. Thank you.
All right, Angelita, the opening was a little bit vague, but I get the point that you're talking about. Ultimately, you do identify the claim, and your argument is about the necessity of those other 2 years, and so that's relatively clear. There's no layout of what the structure is going to be. I do think you rescue yourself a little bit in the body of the speech, because even though you didn't have a preview, you had a pretty good signpost of the supporting claims as you went through them, and at the end you had a very good summary statement. So that's kind of rescues the organizational structure, and we know how all of this information is supposed to have been built together. I think it would be more effective if you led us into that argument instead of look back over the argument. It'll probably be more convincing as we're listening to the information, and it'll make more sense why we're looking at some of the information. There are a couple of claims that I think you need stronger evidence on. One is that the medical schools, admissions deans generally ignore all the information except the prerequisites, and I think that that's a presupposition that you've made, and you need better evidence on that point. It's also a little bit unclear, kind of going along with that, since the other scores do make a difference on the GPA, and that affects people's admission. Why is that not a good tool for making those decisions? I'm not sure why that isn't a good tool for making those decisions, and you never explain what the problem there is. And then on your last argument, where you're saying that the universal knowledge can be obtained in the prerequisites, I'm not sure that. I mean, you basically just list the classes again, and it becomes its own self-defining set of prerequisites without any demonstration that those classes meet those that sense of universal knowledge. So I think that that's a little bit problematic. I thought you did a pretty good job citing information on the cost issues, although I'm not sure how different people would feel about the amount of debt that they have for their undergraduate compared to anybody else. It sounds to me like the graduate school and the medical schools are what cost the greatest amount, and that's where you're still going to be accumulating debt. So, but I think you've got an interesting argument there, although it's not necessarily as substantial as it might be. And the other thing is, we don't get any information about, you mentioned at one point people not being able to complete their undergraduate degrees in 5 years, and many don't. Well, what's the completion rate at medical schools? That would be another one of those things that becomes a consideration on cost issues. Like I said, I thought at the end of the speech that you had a really effective summary so that we know how all this information was supposed to fit together. And you did a nice job, for the most part, talking to the audience and trying to convince us of your point of view.